Hello. Nice of you to come by and join me in Discovery class. Did anybody ever tell you what your character is like? You know what I mean. Are you a jolly person? Do you get along with others? Do you play with your kids? What were you like to work with on the job? Were you a bully? How much time did you spend in front of the mirror? Were you always chubby? Did you get teased at school? Were you born blind or crippled and you were handicapped all your life? Were you born a boy and you wish you were something else? What was your dad and mom like? Did you get along with them? I'm asking you all this because I began with the question, what is your character like? Did you know that Jesus had a lot to say about character? He should know because he created it. I love his list of character traits in his lesson on the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, beginning at verse 2. Let me go down the list. There are 8 of them. 1. When you're at the end of your rope, God has his kingdom of heaven there waiting for you. 2. When you've lost the one most dear to you, you have another friend right beside you to give you comfort. 3. When you see yourself being content with just who you are, no more, no less, at that moment, you find yourself the proud owner of everything that can't be bought. 4. When you have worked up a good appetite for God, you will find his meal and his drink is the best meal that you probably ever ate. 5. When you care for others, at that moment, you will find that yourself has been cared for by God. 6. Blessed are you when you get your inside world put upright. Then you can see God in the outside world. 7. Show people how to cooperate instead of compete and fight. That's when you'll discover who you really are. And finally, 8. When your commitment to God provokes persecution, it's then that you'll be driven even deeper into God's kingdom. Now, I want to talk about a virus this morning that's been sneaking up on us, and it's destroying our character. But I'm not talking about the coronavirus. That's become a worldwide pandemic, I know, and that's keeping us from holding our discovery class even in this room, because here I am again in the room by myself, talking to myself, and I'm seeing all of you sitting out there, and there's Frida on the piano, and we've just sung happy birthday to you, but it's only in my head. We're not doing it. We haven't done it for the last 6 months. That's not the virus that I want to talk about this morning. The coronavirus will eventually pass, just like all the other world plagues did before it. The virus that I'm going to talk about is more subtle, and I find it's very dangerous. And I'm not sure the world knows that it's even here. So, I want you to get yourself another coffee, get comfortable in your favorite chair, cut yourself another piece of banana bread or a piece of watermelon, and I want you to come with me on a journey, and I want you to look with me at a character flaw that's affecting families, it's affecting the workplaces, it's affecting playgrounds, it's affecting churches, even governments, and meaningful relationships. I want to talk about the subject called narcissism. Have you ever heard of it? Do you know how it got its name? Well, let's look at it together and see what we can find. Many centuries ago, The ancient Greeks had a myth, and they tell about a man whose name was Narcissus. The story is about a handsome young hunter. He goes about seeking a perfect partner. He looks, and he looks, and he looks, and several beautiful ladies fawn all over him. He dates the first one, and she moves on. He dates the second one, she moves on. Dates the third one, she moves on. And then, each one that Narcissus takes out, he finds her to be inferior. The story ends when Narcissus meets up with the goddess Revenge. Her name is Nemesis. The goddess Nemesis leads Narcissus to a beautiful mill pond. He looks into the mill pond and he sees his own reflection there in the water. What does he do? He falls in love with his reflection. Looking in the water and seeing himself, that's what he fell in love with. And the story says that he died alone. What happened to him? It warns against the dangers of getting so full of yourself. Psychologists picked up on this trait, and men like Freud, Carl Jung, Gestalt, they borrowed the story to create a behavior pattern called narcissism. What's that? Well, here's the definition. It's a mental condition characterized by shameless adoration of oneself, and one who suffers from it has a chronic lack of empathy. When I was a kid growing up in the country, I never heard of that condition. Did you? Have you ever heard of it? But in the last few years, interest in the characteristic has exploded. As a matter of fact, this subject in the psychology class has become a bit of an epidemic. And there's a reason for it. Contemporary culture, they tell us, breeds this behavior. One writer has said, if you were to design a society for narcissism to thrive, it would have lots and lots of shallow relationships where people never got to know my reputation if I cheated. Because I could just find new relationships. It would simply be a society of style, and there wouldn't be any substance. That's not what Jesus taught. Those 8 character qualities that taught you were just the opposite. They weren't shallow. They were as deep as the deepest sea. Now I have a question for you. Can you see how our culture promotes a sense of entitlement and a sense of selfishness? Take a look at the industry of the entertainment or the advertising industry. What do? They stimulate our desires and they whet our appetite for status, and they cultivate an aspiration for fame, importance. And you're fed the desire to feel special, and you want to express it. Have you ever done a selfie? You can stage it anywhere. Keith Campbell is a research psychologist at the University of Georgia. I like him. He says that narcissism shines best in big cities and online. Places where you can maintain some degree of distance and treat those around you as disposable. Research shows that people most impacted by this personality disorder are those who live and work closely with those individuals. Campbell says the narcissists tend to be very attractive. They exude confidence and they exude power. But as time goes by, their charm fades, and you discover that they're only in it for themselves. They have no humility. He lives primarily to elevate his ego, and he feels little remorse for those he hurts. When you think about narcissism, you think about the grandiose. It's usually someone who's self-important, entitlement, assertiveness, bold self-confidence. These people are so full of themselves that they end up doing reasonably well in life because they're not afraid to date people or be celebrities or even be politicians. When you're selfish and when you're hedonistic and you exactly do what you want all the time, then you become impulsive. You commit crimes. You lose your relationships. Eventually, people just don't want to be around you because you're always thinking about you. I know of preachers like that. Okay, let's bring this topic right down to earth. What can grandparents, what can parents, what can Sunday school teachers, what can youth leaders, what can pastors do to avoid raising narcissists? Let's give them some CPR. That's a simple acrostic of 3 words. Now, I'm not talking about cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I'm talking about C, compassion, P, passion, and R, responsibility. Those 3 things. Let me explain. First, let's talk about compassion. Narcissists are not compassionate. Jesus wanted us to be a good role model. Love your kids. Teach your child empathy. You do that by demonstrating it yourself. If you're compassionate, your kids will be too. If you're not empathetic, the kids won't be either. Compassion is the magic vaccination for narcissism. An elderly woman and her grandson, whose face was sprinkled with bright freckles, spent the day at the zoo. Lots of children were waiting in line to get their cheeks painted by a local artist who was decorating them with tiger paws. "You've got so many freckles, there's no place to paint," a girl in the line said to the little fellow. Embarrassed, the little boy dropped his head, and his grandmother knelt down next to him. "I love your freckles. When I was a little girl," said Grandma, "I always wanted freckles," she said while tracing her fingers across the child's freckled, beautiful face. The little boy looked up and said to her grandma, "Really, Grandma? Freckles are beautiful?" "Of course," said the grandmother. "Why, just name me one thing that's prettier than freckles." The little boy thought for a moment, and then peering intensely into Grandma's face, he said in a soft whisper, "I think something that's prettier, Grandma, are wrinkles. Your wrinkles." That's compassion. That's something that narcissists don't have. Okay, second CPR. Compassion, P, passion. What do your kids like doing? Art? Dance? Going hunting with Dad? Hockey? Hiking? Cooking? Sewing? Painting? The ego isn't involved when I mention those. The real motivation isn't ego, it's joy. They love doing it. It's much more fun camping or hiking than just taking a bunch of pictures of myself with mountains in the background. Open up those passion channels for kids and have them just enjoy what they're doing. That's all you have to do as parents. We've all had to do it. I did it. You're doing it. A farmer had some puppies. He needed to sell them. He painted a sign advertising 4 puppies for sale, and he nailed it on a post on the edge of his yard. As he was driving the last nail into the post, he felt a tug on the bottom of his overalls. He looked down, and he was looking into the eyes of a little boy. "Mister, the little boy said. "I want to buy one of your puppies." The farmer said, "Well, these puppies, they come from a fine line of parents, and they cost a good deal of money." The boy dropped his head for a moment. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a handful of change, and he showed the farmer 39 cents. He said, "Is the 39 cents enough to at least take a look? If you bring them, let me see them?" "Sure," said the farmer. "You keep your pennies." He let out a whistle, and the mother of the puppies came running out of the dog kennel. Out from the doghouse and down the ramp ran the mum, followed by 4 balls of fur. The little boy pressed his face against the chain fence, and his eyes danced with delight. As the dogs made their way, running to the fence, the little boy just danced with glee. And then he noticed something that back in the doghouse was still stirring. And as he watched, slowly another ball appeared, and this one was noticeably smaller than the other 4. And down the ramp it slid. Then, in somewhat awkward manner, the little pup began bobbling toward the others, doing his best to catch up. "I want that one," the little boy said, pointing to the runt. The farmer knelt down by the boy's side and said, "Son, you don't want that puppy. He will never be able to run. He will never be able to play, just like the other dogs would. He's just a little runt." With that, the little boy stepped back from the fence, and he reached down and he began rolling up the leg of his trousers. He showed the farmer a brace running down both sides of his leg and attaching itself to a specially made shoe. Looking back up at the farmer, he said, "You see, sir, I don't run very well myself. And that little runt will need somebody who understands him." The farmer reached down and picked up the little pup, and he said to the boy, "You keep your money. The pup's yours." That's passion. A narcissist would never choose a runt of the litter. I want you to choose passion. CPR, compassion, passion, and now R. I call it responsibility. This is about doing chores. That's about taking responsibility for your own actions, good or bad. When things go well, you get credit. When things go poorly, you get blamed. And over time, you can develop from that good and bad something that's called self-esteem. If you can see when you succeed, and if you can see when you fall, you know really who you are. You know what you're good at, and you know what you're bad at. I believe in natural consequences. If you're learning to ride a bike and you fall and you scrape your knee and it bleeds, it doesn't mean you'll never get back on the bike again. It just means that you just suck it up, get out the Band-Aid, get back on the bike, try again. It's a learning process. No one else is involved, just you and your bike. I like to see kids that are grounded. I like them to see them grounded in Band-Aids. I like to see them grounded in try it again. I like to see them grounded in keep on going. I like to see them grounded, you'll make it. I like to see their skills improve. There's no one judging them. It's not win, and it's not lose. That's not it. That's responsibility. A young university student was taking a walk with his kindly professor. As they walked along, lying on the edge of the path, they saw a pair of old shoes, which belonged to a poor peasant employed by that farmer working out there in the field. The student said to the professor, "Let's play a trick on him. Let's hide his shoes. And we're going to go over there and we'll conceal ourselves in the bushes. And we'll watch his perplexity when he can't find them." The professor looked at the student and he said, No, we're not going to do that. Never amuse ourselves at the expense of someone else. Never do that. If you'd like to give yourself a greater pleasure, I want you to put a coin in each of the shoes. And then we'll hide ourselves and watch the discovery. The professor reached in his wallet and he pulled out 2 gold coins. The student put 1 coin in one shoe and another gold coin in the other. And then they went and hid themselves. The poor peasant finished his work, came to the path where he'd left his coat and his old shoes, and he slipped his foot into one of the shoes. And as he slipped it in, he felt something hard. He took the shoe off again, and he reached in with his hand and he pulled out a gold coin. Astonishment and wonder were upon his countenance. He gazed upon the coin and he looked at it again and again and again. Same thing happened with the other shoe. His feelings overcame him, and he fell on his knees, and he looked up to heaven, and he took his hands, and he prayed. And they heard these words, "Thank you, Lord. My sick wife can now get help. We can now see a doctor." He arose and disappeared down the path. The student watched, and he was deeply affected. "Now," said the professor to his student, "are you now better pleased than if you had played that intended trick?" "You have taught me a wonderful lesson," said the student. "I will never forget that. You have taught me to be responsible. I was a joker. I was going to hurt that man, and I was going to affect him probably the rest of his life. I want to be like you. I'll be responsible. CPR, compassion, passion, and responsibility." And what have I told you this morning? I've told you that narcissism is not the characteristic of a Christian. Jesus taught us what it was like to be a follower of his. I want you to do the same. Now, before you go, I want to tell you a story from the sunny side of the street. I know it's been difficult, all of us locked up. We've been trying to distance, we've been cleaning ourselves, and we've been putting on our masks. And so far, we've been very fortunate at Brentview that we don't have that virus sticking its neck out and we being infected. Before you go, I got a joke. I want you to have a smile. And by the way, if you have a story for me to tell as a joke, would you phone me? Now, they got to be good ones. Don't you have me something that's going to be naughty. I want to be able to, and I'll quote you. I'll use it right here at the end of my class, as long as we're doing this online stuff. Anyway, a wife visited the state prison to see her husband, who's an inmate. They visited by phone because they had to talk to each other through a glass screen. The wife was a bit downcast, and she said, "It's springtime. I'd like to plant the garden. And I've got some Dutch sets and I have some potatoes and I want to put the seeds in, but I have no one to dig the garden." The prisoner looked at his wife and said, "Don't plant the garden. I hid the guns in there. Leave the garden alone." The wife went home. She was dejected and very downcast. The following week, she came back to see her husband again. He said to her, "How was your week?" She said, "After I visited you, the following day, the warden of the prison came to our house with 2 carloads of officers. And they dug the garden from fence post to fence post. And they didn't find one gun." With a smile, the convict looked at his wife and said, "Now's the time to plant the potatoes." See you next week.